So I didn't think it was going to be, far fetched to think that it was not going to be as busy this year as it was last year. But I think it's even taken it a step farther. I think it's gone back below the water level
Okay.
again. And I think so it's you know, it wasn't surprising to be down from last year, but I think it's down more than it should be.
Mm.
Like I think it's gone down below where it should be from a water level standpoint.
David always brings it up, and I think about it because I mean he may be ultimately right. He always says we're just getting back to the normal because and I think he's right about that, but like I think it might be more of a dip though because he what he they do they've been busier. I think it's pockets, right?
Yeah,
Like
I think
Mhm.
it maybe depends on
yeah,
the industry,
yeah,
Mhm.
because
but like,
because he's in the fuel type or not fuel, but the
Yeah.
petroleum
Mhm.
based product, which is high demand.
like retail's way off,
Yeah, oh
Lube.
yeah, right.
and so that's consumer for the most part,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, I just think it's interesting. You look at like the inflation, was going out of control. And then, the Fed goes in and starts raising up interest rates. And then I think what this last week they said, well, inflation, I think, went down like a tick from where it had been. And of course, the market jumped up, I think, a
Mhm.
thousand points earlier this week because of it. But, if you think about it, the whole what drives the inflation is, you've got a demand that you can't keep up on the supply side, right? That's a big contributor to why
Mhm.
inflation goes up. And so you got to be careful when you say, "Well, it's great to see that inflation might be going down." Well, what does that tell you? It means that the demand is lowering, right?
Right.
And so when you trigger the demand being down with interest rates at a level that they better be real careful because if you don't start cutting back on those interest rates, you've already got people that are not starting to buy stuff. And if you're not buying anything, then you're not producing anything. And then, of course, things get from point A to point B. When I talk about the freight
Right.
recession, I think that we're starting to see that now, where the demand now is starting to drop and the interest rates aren't helping because even housing market, um, I've got a guy that just recently transferred up from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I mean, for the last several years, people put their house on the market and it's gone, next day, 2 days. And a lot of times, this wasn't uncommon. You actually got more for your house than what you were asking for.
Right.
Well, now this guy's like 2 months in and he just fired his realtor. But he said it's a
Wow.
lot of it's driven on these interest rates,
Well,
So
yeah. I mean, shit. Who wants to go pay that? I mean, it's jacked it up quite a bit.
what is it?
So
Over six now? Six
mm,
higher than
I don't
that?
know,
something, I'm not sure.
David. What do you
I'm
got?
not um, so what I'm hoping or expecting to hear based on the slowdown is that these, and I hate to go back to the diesel inventory story, but are those inventories going to go up then? Are we going to have a surplus of diesel after the first of the year? Or why don't we already have a surplus of diesel? There's just so many conflicting, not that I'm saying anybody's version of what's going on is wrong, because there definitely is a slowdown and you see it and people aren't buying. It's just, I don't know, just so, every, as long as everybody else gets theirs and we don't get ours, I guess
Oh,
is the
yeah.
way it's always going to be.
Yeah, that's how it is, I
Not
think.
to
Yeah.
They said he's supposed to tap the oil reserves and get them back, get the stockpile back up. But I don't know what that really does for the price. I don't know, man. It's just a weird time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know, dipping into the political scene, but you've got uh, currently setting 49, as of this morning, 49-49 with two states outstanding. You've got Nevada, which I don't know if you noticed that, but they're at 95% of the
Yeah,
vote in,
in
and
Arizona.
it's less than 1,000 votes
Right.
different right now, leaning towards the Republican
Oh, it's
candidate
less
out
than a
there.
thousand
It's
now.
less than 1,000.
So it's yeah. I
And
don't.
then you
I'm
got
not
a
gonna get into it.
Georgia, which is going to have to be a runoff. So if the guy holds on, the Republican holds on in Nevada, you're going to have a 50-49 with one state left that's going to determine. And for the
And
Republicans,
be
because
Georgia.
you've got with Kamala Harris being the deciding
That
factor,
deciding vote. Yeah.
that the Republicans actually have to win Georgia to actually hold that. And so then it already looks like they're going to have the House. It's just a matter of what the number is going to come in. So you're going to have a Congress that is a Republican versus a Democrat in the presidency. And that the House and the Senate are going to just going to start throwing
There's
stuff.
nothing going to get done.
No, they're going to start throwing stuff. And part of that, what I heard, is one of the first things that if they can get control, is they're going to push the energy is like one of the first things they're going to push and try to demand from him to start uh, opening up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you're right. Nothing's going to get done. It's going to be a stalemate.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting. I don't know if you saw Elon Musk, but earlier in the week, and I don't know if he was just trying to push for Republicans getting in office, but he's like, if you're undecided, you should vote Republican because it's healthiest for the economy when when the Congress and the president are not of the same party. He said that's how it should always be.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking,
Yeah.
okay, I get that, but no one works with anybody anymore.
Well,
Yeah,
it
and
depends.
And literally nothing would ever get done.
And every goddamn thing needs to be politicized now. Everything needs to be politicized, which
Oh yeah.
just annoys
Mhm.
the crap out of me.
It's like if a politician happens to be the first one to say something about anything, and to your point, it could be like flavor of ice cream.
Yep.
All in a sudden, everybody just jumps on the ship or off the ship.
You know what I've started to notice and been looking at is look at the politicians that the media never bangs on. Just look at those that could just go out. They're both sides,
Mhm.
right? That can get on MSNBC or NBC and just say anything they want. But if they say it, nothing happens. But if somebody else in the same party says it,
Mhm.
then they get terrorized. I've often wondered, is there like some backdoor, like, hey, we're like some nefarious like type things, like there's like it's almost like it's being orchestrated.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and here's our cast of characters, right? These people don't get hurt, but everybody else is free game, right? So then it's just weird. I just been noticing that lately.
You almost feel like, when you used to watch, I don't know, maybe you guys still watch pro wrestling, but back in the day when I was big into wrestling back in the 80s with Hulk
Mhm.
Hogan and all those
Oh
guys,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you had the good guys and you had the bad guys,
Mhm.
right? And they hated each other,
Right.
right? But the behind the scenes, the
They
truth
didn't.
was they just had beers with each other.
Right.
They were traveling every night, going in, staying in
Yeah.
the same hotels.
Yeah.
Same locker
So
room.
they were best friends.
Yeah. So like,
Right, and then you almost
yeah,
think is it almost played out that way in politics?
I think it
where
is.
That's
the
well,
Republicans and the Democrats,
that-
there it's the heel
I
depending
think
on
it
what
is.
side
Yeah.
I think it
depending on
kinda
what
is.
side you are.
Yeah.
well said.
And then they get behind closed doors and they're just smoking
Yeah,
cigars,
absolutely.
drinking, and then it's just like, we got to go out and put on a good show tonight.
Yep.
Yeah. Here's one that
Let's F
shocked.
them this way.
Yeah. Here's
Yeah.
one that shocked me. Absolutely shocked me. You know who Kevin McCarthy is?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what Kevin McCarthy is, David?
Mhm.
Okay.
He's in line to
Ohio
be the new Speaker of the House.
Was.
Yeah, was.
Yeah.
Oh, he was. I guess I didn't hear.
Well, so
something.
here, here. So like, I'm baffled at like why he would be. Like, I'm just thinking, why?
Why?
What
What do you? I'm sorry. Why he would be in line, or why he would not be in line?
Why he
Or
would be?
Yeah.
Why he
They
would
vote
be?
for it, right?
Right,
Is
they
that-
vote for it.
yeah.
But he's like saying that he's going to be in all this stuff. So then I'm thinking to myself, this dude used to live with Frank Lund, right? Did you know that?
No.
Kevin McCarthy and Frank Lund used to be roommates. Frank Lund is a Democratic pollster,
Yeah.
right? McCarthy is on the right. So how are you two living together, right? So it's like, wow. So not that they can't get along, as my point is, you can't be the leader in living with Frank Lund. I mean, come on. That you know what I mean? There's like that's what I mean. There's inside stuff going on that we
Yeah.
don't know about. Like, is Lund giving him pollster numbers where he can go and be like,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
but-
Trump was was always the playboy.
He was
I'm
their
sure I'm sure he
guy,
was a
yeah.
capitalist,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, he was as socially liberal as anybody could be. And now the right holds him up like he's Jesus,
I
like
know.
and that guy couldn't, he probably
A lot of baggage.
yeah. There's nothing out of that Bible that guy's ever read,
Right.
right?
I think there's a little bit of a sway now on that side too. I think, at least from what I see and read, people might be going a little bit more towards DeSantis or whatever.
Oh, I believe that. I think that there
because
is.
there's just so many levels crazy
It's
that you can deal with.
well, yeah, and it's y- if you're pragmatic in your thought and you are a Republican or somebody that at least leans that way, or you're just like, I'm not real big on a Republican, but there's no way I'm going to vote for a Democrat. If you're looking at possibilities and you're pragmatic, Trump's just not electable. And it doesn't matter if you agree with his policies more than DeSantis, which they basically are going to mirror each other. But it, they're if you just look at the two, DeSantis would have a lot better chance of winning. Um, not necessarily in he would. I feel like he'd have a harder time in a primary than he would um winning in the what do you call the main election? I forget what you call it, but you know, up against whoever the Democrat nominee would be. But it's just insane how what I guess one of the things that struck me this week that really struck me, and people kept talking about red wave, and then it didn't happen. Is that even if you throw out like hot topics like abortion, what side you fence you on, or if you're on, the immigration thing, those things are kind of big. And then if you throw in the January 6th and all that, and there's all this crap on the outside. But if you just looked at the economy and the economy only and everything that's gone on, if there was anything that would drive you to vote for the other party, which in this case would be a Republican side,
Hmm.
there's never been a better example of voting Republican than this year. And
Yeah.
to see how everything is split 50-50, and now you're even talking about Nevada, which is like one of the very last states we're waiting on, is literally
Why? Why?
50-50.
Yeah.
That what it tells me is that I think
That the
that
algorithms
w-
control to be 49,
well,
51,
no,
50,
I
50.
think
I
I
think
think
so.
you you've gotten to a point in this country that going into any election, I think probably somewhere between 85 and maybe 90, and it could even be higher than that, are already set in stone no matter what their
Yeah.
side does, says,
Yeah.
they are going to vote for that party. That there is a very slim minority anymore that could vote one election
There's
this way,
not a lot of
one
independence.
election this way, or would do a split ticket where maybe they
Yeah.
vote for a Republican governor, but they vote for a Democrat on the
It's a good
Congress side.
point.
And so now it's just got to the point where it's just like it's you have
Yeah.
no more free thinking. Where I would
It's
think if you go back,
programming.
yeah, if you go back, 50 years or something, I'm sure there was still people that had their heels dug in. I'm not ignorant to say that, but it
Well,
was probably more like
I think
60,
well, here's
70%.
here's what I think the difference is, man, because I love politics and I really do. Here's the difference: is you could like in the up until probably like the late '80s, '90s, I think is when it changed. You could go any party could go outside and say, "Hey, man, I really don't like your bill. You really don't like mine, but let's get it right. Let's get the things in there.
Compromise.
Yeah, you get the things I need today." It's what I think's happened. Just my personal opinion is that the media has gone completely ape shit wild,
Mhm.
and it has fractured America. And
Mm.
part of the reason is it's programming. It's like I mentioned Weinstein earlier. One of the things he says everybody should read these books. He's got it on his Twitter feed. And I think what happens is I think we're being programmed through the media, like certain things, right? Like if you're this color, you should be this, or yeah, you should have this guilt or this or that, right? So I mean, they've really it's essentially doing the same thing Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin did, is programming it through the media, right? And I think that that's both sides try to do it, and but one side particularly owns it, and it's just that's a huge problem when the media can't wake up in the morning and say just the things we've seen a young man defend himself in a
Mhm.
in a protest, right?
Yep.
He was found not guilty,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
the media programmed him as guilty, right? Programmed us all as he's guilty, just in the way they showed it, right?
Right.
Now they're being sued for that,
Right.
rightfully so. So, a distorted reality based on the program that's being sent out of Washington is screwing this place up. And then, you mentioned Elon earlier, right? Why does the government give a crap if he buys Twitter? Why is our administration saying they're going to investigate him on the Twitter deal? Was Twitter your left-wing outlet so bad that you were distorting perception and reality and hate and lying? Was it the 50,000 accounts that were saying the N-word 500,000 times a year? Is that what you don't want us to know? So because through the social media and the media outlets, you can kind of act like there's a lot of terror going on in society, right? But when you dug into that one account, was it 30 accounts? Was it 30 accounts? 30 accounts using the N word. But yet, how the media reported it back
It was
then, it
everybody.
was all of us. We're
Yeah.
all racist.
But
Yeah.
social media is
So
the biggest pile of crap.
it's horrible. That's why I've never
It
done it.
should never
It's
be.
garbage.
Yeah.
And it always has been and always will be because it distorts the perception of
Tony, you said
reality.
if you could explain to me what is it about politics you love? So I would hope that you're going to say you love it enough to see it change, because in its current format, in my opinion, it's a big pile of poop.
It is. I think we've gone through this stuff before, though, and because I've had a minor in college from it. I
Like
loved
when
it.
you said, the media generates, or
Mhm.
they bring
They've
up all this stuff. The politicians do a pretty damn good job of it on their own.
Yeah, and that's when the media should stop them from being
Yeah,
able
I'm
to
not.
to
Yeah, I
to do
agree.
that.
I agree.
So just a brief little historical thing is when Thomas Jefferson ran for president against Hamilton. Okay, I mean Hamilton. I think it's the New York Post or Washington Post. It came from Hamilton. He bought it. Right? He invented it. So he depicted Thomas Jefferson urinating on kids. Right. So then, I mean, that back then was considered. Jefferson was
Well, it still would be
irate.
today. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So Jefferson's irate. So what does Jefferson go do? Because what's going on behind the scenes is Washington's not putting his name on Hamilton or Jefferson. He's staying out of it. And they both want him to say, he's our guy, but he won't do it, which is honorable. So then Jefferson buys an ad out of the rival paper. I think it was Ben Franklin's paper that he owned, Philadelphia something, Inquisitor or whatever it's called, of Hamilton squeezing all the kids together and squeezing their necks like this, and their heads are going to explode, right? So, I mean, this has been going on. I mean, Abraham Lincoln had to send 10,000 soldiers to the voting booth during the Civil War so people could vote because the army guy was trying to run against him and take power you know what I mean? So we've had a history of this. Hell, we've had the homie Congress or a senator beat the crap out of
Oh, yeah.
a member
With a
so
cane.
bad.
With a cane, yeah.
So bad he almost
They
died.
almost killed him.
Yeah, and then he re-ran and won election. So I mean, we have a history of this. It's been more civil, but David, to answer your question, is I've always just found the concept of our country politically interesting, and just from the historical fact of
Yeah.
it.
I
You know.
guess, not so much the political players, but the people of the country.
Mhm.
In this last century, the 60s got pretty pushed to the polls, right? I mean, as far as you had, the left counterculture, the younger generation versus, and that was more of a generational thing, right? That was more, not that you didn't have some liberals that were of older age,
And Vietnam was a bad thing,
right?
and we should have never did what we
But
did.
it really, you could draw a line almost generational
Mhm.
on that.
Mhm.
Today, there is some generational, and you're always going to have that. You're always going to have younger people are always going to tend to probably lean more liberal. I mean, it's kind of the saying is that
I did when I was in
a
college.
lot of
Yeah,
people, you start
absolutely.
as a liberal, then you grow up, you got to pay taxes, you have kids, and then people tend to push more towards being more
You
conservative in
die a
thought.
liberal,
Right.
grow a conservative, and then you die a liberal. That's
Right.
what my communist professor in college used
Yeah.
to tell me. I swear to God.
But
That's what he used to tell me. And we got along. He gave
right.
me A's.
Right.
I mean, he could debate. He's like,
Yeah.
was great.
But and then I'm sure, if you go back into the 1800s, before, what Lincoln took over and then finally had to face it because you had so many
And
presidents
we were
prior that just would not face
we
the
were
problem.
already in the precipice of it. Yep.
He just took it over when it had
Yep.
hit the point where it was going to pop.
Yeah, Buchanan lit the match.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't going to stop.
And so,
Was it
but
Buchanan?
but then that political piece, was based, I know some people would say it's state rights. Well, it was state rights because you were enslaving people,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, but the core of it was the slavery piece. It wasn't
horrible.
state rights,
Yeah.
but
State rights.
but that's not that's different from today. And I don't know that in the history of this country it's been as divided as it is now.
I think it has. I mean, okay. So, like, I'm a little bit of a history buff. So, if you go back to like the Lincoln, let me just make two comparisons. If you go back to Lincoln, I mean, the newspapers were calling Mary Todd a idiot, retarded, things like.
She might have been.
Well, but
she was a terrible person, in
but
my opinion.
But hang on though. But does the media need to be doing that? Right?
No.
So they're doing it to attack Lincoln. Is ultimately why they're doing it.
No.
So
so maybe more you're talking about the media.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now it's on
Driving
steroids
it.
because you
Yeah.
do have stuff like social media. So
historians-
I agree with you on the media part. They just have a louder microphone to yell out of now to amplify it. But they probably have always been what you've described. They picked their side and they've distorted the truth to back up their ideologies. That I agree with.
I mean, it started at the concept of the nation. I mean, George Washington, right?
Right.
They said about him
Right.
and his family on
Right.
the behalf. So, I mean, it's yeah, it's a
But
form.
when I say I feel like Joe Blow on the street, I feel like it's as bad as it's ever been.
I
I
agree.
completely agree with that.
That it's almost got to, you were talked about compromise earlier. And I think, you could find compromise, but when you come from two sides that are so far apart, you have no baseline to build off. Like if you're starting your argument off of communism or socialist, and I'm coming from a place of capitalism, we can't find a middle ground. We can come from a basis of capitalists and say start debating over tax rates and how high it should be or a certain
Right.
percentage, but you can't come to a middle ground when you're so far apart. And
Light years.
yeah,
With that type of
and you take abortion for example. If you draw a line in the sand as far as one way or the other, where are you going to find a middle ground in that? I think that there's a middle ground, but I'm a different thinker. But it's just there's no middle ground argument, and I think that that's where it's got in this country is that you can't even come from a base that you can find a middle on. And even if there was, I don't think either side is interested in finding that middle ground.
Yeah. It's to me, it's like, yeah, it's so polarizing on this side and so polarizing on this side, right? And really, most of America is just kind of like right here. And I mean, I don't know, man. I think you're right. It's been historians will say if you go back and you look at to like Lincoln and the Civil War, it's when the media started not reporting the news back then. They would say that wasn't true. Lincoln's lying. He's kind of how they treated Trump in a way. And well, they've been doing it since Ronald Reagan, really.
Yeah.
Because Reagan, they thought he was dumb, goofy. So they've been doing it to every Republican since the 80s. And we can all go watch the video and watch it because they don't do it to the other side. I mean, we got a president right now who's not physically all there, dude, and they're not saying that.
Well,
so
or George, you get George Bush.
Yeah, we've had those.
Right.
Yeah, second
Yeah.
Bush. I mean, they painted second Bush as he was
Hitler.
Hitler. Well, or it was a second grade intelligence, right? And then, but after
and
he
then
gets out,
Obama, who never showed his college transcripts,
well,
was
then,
somehow a genius.
And then George Bush likes to paint, and he hangs out with, became friends with Michelle Obama,
right?
And then the left now they
like
they
him.
love him.
They like
they
him.
love him.
They
now.
like him because he hates Trump.
Right.
See, here's my whole thing. You got Pepsi and Coke. Those are interchangeable Democratic Republicans, right?
Yep.
Like Mitch McConnell, he's a Pepsi Coke. Nancy Pelosi, Pepsi Coke, right? All these Pepsi and Coke. Donald Trump was like Shasta root beer. He was like something
Diet.
totally different.
You mean Diet Shasta root beer?
Yeah, Diet Shasta root beer. I mean, he's like just something totally off. No one owns him.
Right.
They don't own him. They're donating him money. He's like, I don't need it. Right? That's why I kind of like that.
I bet he does.
What?
Need the money.
Well, he never took the donations from him.
Mhm.
He never took the. I'm talking about the Koch brothers,
Right.
the
I'd like to do some digging on that.
the big Republican donors didn't give him money, so he was getting money from the
I
RNC
see
though.
what you're saying.
They weren't giving him money. They say they're not going to do it now.
That
So-
really, at the end of the day, on Trump, it's just he's a person that you cannot like, and that I mean, if you didn't know politics at all, if he was just a guy that came over to your house, you probably wouldn't like him.
I don't know that though. I don't know that.
I'm just saying
You don't know that.
he's got a that's I mean, it's because he's on the wrong side of the fence that the Democrats hate him, and then he talks, and then it makes it even a hate different. So it's a different type of hate than it would have been for like if John McCain was running, when he was running for president. Which, by the way, that was another one that he became a Democratic hero
Worst
after.
election
But when
ever.
he was running for president, he was the devil from the left side.
Right.
Was not liked.
Right.
And that's how it is every time, regardless of how drab your candidate is. If you're on the wrong side, they hate him. But then Trump took it to a whole new level because of who he is,
And he knew their game, I think.
Yeah.
And he
But yeah, he's just not a likable person. And I think that's why I think DeSantis is going to win the nomination at the end of the day, is because it had nothing to do with Trump. If you just looked at Trump and you took away who he was and you looked at his policies, in my opinion, because I lean that way, I'd say he did a great job. I think he did a great job as a governing.
Yeah.
The problem is the social media. Every time you put a mic in front of his face, everything is coming from like a schoolboy defensive, I'm better, arrogant. Just
But let me ask you this though: have you ever seen a president attacked like he was?
no.
Right. So in his defense,
But I think he was going to.
I mean, think about this. They said things horribly about Ivanka and his kids, right? And even the little one, right? And the president right now's kid's a crackhead.
Oh yeah,
man.
oh,
He's
yeah,
a
absolutely.
crackhead.
Yeah, there's
I mean,
no debating that. But I can't remember what my point was here.
I'm sorry, I just
But it's what the hell was I saying? Oh, I know what I was going to say. Is that people couldn't get past him and his personality
I think
to
you're
look
right.
to
Yeah.
look at the good things he did. And you were talking about Lincoln, and I thought he had talked about when after um shoot, it was McClellan. McClellan was his first general.
Was running against him. Yeah.
Well, but McClellan also was his first general that, because when he the history lesson on Civil War, at the time that Civil War was getting actually to break out and they knew it was going to happen, the head of the army at that point was Winfield Scott, who to this day is the longest tenured general of the army of all time. He was fought in the War of 1812, and then shortly thereafter became the general of the army. And it was pretty slow times really from after the War of
Civil War, yeah.
1812 all the way up to Civil War. You had the um, Mexican American War, which was basically based off the whole Alamo deal.
Yeah.
When they went down there, and a lot of your generals that fought in the Civil War were young officers
Right.
that fought under Winfield Scott in that short-lived battle.
Winfield Scott, that's a unique name.
But by the time he got to that point, can't even get in a saddle anymore. He's like 60 years old, weighs 300 pounds, and he's like, "Hey," Lincoln's like, "Hey, who should be running this deal?" Because he's like, "I can't do this. I can't go into an active war. I'm retiring."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, who should be the guy?" And he said, "Robert E. Lee." But your problem is if Virginia goes, he's going to follow Virginia.
Right.
And Lincoln even called him in,
They wanted him, yeah.
and Lee said, "Well,
It'd have been over quicker.
yeah." He said, I'd be glad to, but he goes, "I'm telling you, Virginia goes." And then it was like a couple of days later, Virginia went, and he went to the South.
Crazy.
So it was McClellan. McClellan got first shot at it, and McClellan should have been able to end that war quick, but he was too big of a pussy, and he had numbers all the time at the beginning and never advanced. And then so Lincoln got so pissed off at him that he pulls him out, and then went on like I think eventually, I think it was like three more generals before he finally settled on Grant.
Yeah. Because Grant was a drinker.
Yep.
They was worried about him.
But one of them that he landed on was Pope. Pope was one of these generals that he took. And the reason I bring up Trump is that a lot of people that were close to Lincoln said, this guy is a braggart, a liar. You can't trust him.
Yeah.
And Lincoln, and I don't have this quote down exactly, but he goes, because the Popes were from Southern Illinois. He goes, and of course Lincoln was from Illinois. And he goes, "I've known the Popes, their family, all my life, and all of them are braggarts and liars. But I don't know why that would disqualify him from being a good general." And that's kind of what I think on Trump, is that kind of back to that quote from Lincoln,
Yeah.
is that the personality, I'm not looking for your personality. I
Right.
need you to be a person that can perform this
Yeah.
job. And that kind of goes with Trump, but people couldn't get beyond all that.
No,
stuff.
because he kept getting caught up in the riffraff, and it's like he needed to take it. He didn't listen well like that, and it's like this. Maggie Hagerman of the New York Times, she's a Trump hater, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she writes a book. Well, Trump authorizes an interview with her. It's like, dude, she's going to trash you. Why would you do an interview with her?
He did the same thing with Bob Woodward.
Right. Same thing.
More
Exactly.
than once.
Exactly.
More than once.
So that stuff doesn't make sense. Like it's almost like he
It's
sets it up so that there would be a negative. I don't know what the hell they think. Like negative popularity is good, or so. I don't know. I don't get it, man.
I think he, in his mind, thinks that he can win people over. Like, I think he thinks if you would just, so I think that kind of, you ran out of tape.
There we go.
okay.
We're
We're
back.
good. All right.
Yeah, we're
So
back.
you
My
are
bad.
listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen show. I think it's it's when, like what Matt's saying, it's difficult to watch that stuff and think that kids act better than what the adults do.
Oh, yeah,
As far as maturity wise,
Yeah.
you
and none of them are good. He
mhm.
was extraordinarily bad, and I think he just put gasoline on the fire.
you you look at somebody like MTG and how the fuck did she get reelected?
Yeah.
How in the hell did that happen? And it just baffles me. The civility that we have towards one another and the common sense factor is long gone. I just don't understand it. I try not to follow that
Yeah,
stuff
I'm
too much.
convinced in some of these areas that you could pull out the candidate that you had, insert a German Shepherd, and that German Shepherd would still win.
And
I
a little,
thoroughly believe that.
and I'm also surprised on the other side that Whitmer won Michigan. And I'm like, how?
I mean, Fetterman almost, and I didn't follow it real close, and not that I think Oz would have been good,
Mhm.
but I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think in some of these areas where they lean heavy one way or the other, it literally does not matter who you could put as the candidate. It's just that candidate. Now they may not win by as much as they would if it was a popular good candidate,
Mhm.
but in some of these areas they're so left or so right. The
Yeah.
vote almost comes down more not on who you're anymore. And I think I almost feel like this way for myself, and I'm sure other people do as well, is that when you go to a voting booth, your vote, who you're voting for, is not a vote for who you're voting for. It's a vote against the person you don't want in there.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
It's not that. because you can't say, "Hey, do you really in love with this person that you're voting for?"
Mhm.
No, not at all. But the person that the other person on the ballot, I hate, and I'm not voting. So I'm voting out of just against this person.
Well, even like some people that won around here, I'm like, how the hell did that person win? You know, you're like, I just don't get it.
Well, one of the
I don't think people pay attention.
no, like one of the funniest ones is, one of our senators was all, "Thank you for reelecting me," and I kept thinking to myself, "You're the only one on a ticket, dude." That's what
Was
I
it
kept,
Young?
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this dude,
Yeah,
I've
he's not any good.
no, I've communicated with him in emails, and he the one thing that disturbed me was he was all on Biden's butt about the Afghanistan withdrawal. Okay,
Mhm.
so then all of a sudden we jump into the Ukraine thing, and he says we need to send troops right away. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, dude. You just said you were going to hold him accountable to Afghanistan. That's kind of wrapped up and gone away, and now you're wanting to send us to Ukraine of all places where you could really get into a nuclear conflict. So it's just like, man, but then again, he's really the only one on the ballot there, and it's like,
Yeah, that's what I'm
I don't
saying.
know, man.
People
He
are
wasn't the only one on the
people
ballot,
are
but
vote. That's what I don't know if you heard, but I said that anymore people are not voting for people; they're voting against people. Is
yeah,
what it is.
Yep.
I don't want this person, so I by proxy I have to vote for this person.
and I
No
don't,
one's enthused about who they're voting for.
and I'm concerned about a question in my mind I have is, they always talk about these independent voters, right? And I'm thinking to myself, there's probably a lot of people that are registered independent, but I don't know if they really think they know, like they act like they know that how those are going to go. And there's so many of them, and how they kind of dissect it down. It does look like they were surprised. It's just weird. Like they're surprised in some areas where young voters voted Republican, and then
Hmm.
young voters voted Democrat. I guess the bottom line is, for me, I want to see us stop talking about this cheating thing. We can't keep saying the other side's cheating, and the other side can't keep saying the other side's cheating, because to me, it turns into the UFO thing. It's like,
Yeah,
if I don't have physical video evidence of somebody,
but it's
Again, if
you
you keep
know,
telling yourself that that's what there is and
but
that's what there
it's
is.
right.
almost
Yeah,
gotten so bad
it's bad.
that
Oh, yeah.
It's
even what
really
you're
bad.
talking about, video proof and everything, it's like people see it
That may
and
not be.
still
Yeah,
don't believe it.
you're right.
That people they are so locked in on their
Mhm.
what they think things are. That's why I'm saying you could have in some of these districts that are heavy left or heavy right, you could literally put a dog as your candidate and they will win. They will vote for that dog before they will vote for that Democrat
Yep.
Well,
or that Republican that's running against them.
Matt, thank you for saying that, because there was a gentleman that was dead and won.
Ah,
Did you know this?
I did not.
Yeah.
Yes. Here,
I heard about that
I'm
this
gonna look
morning.
it up.
He was 85 years old.
That's what I'm saying. People they do not
We
care.
do.
You're voting against, you're not voting for.
Yeah.
Um,
We do need to keep more elderly Caucasian people in
Tony, yeah,
office.
dead
Just
man Tony DeLucia reelected in Pennsylvania State House.
Lucia.
Yeah,
Sounds like the mob might have
yeah.
had a piece in that.
right.
He's gonna win no matter
On
what.
Yeah.
We're gonna take that seat no matter what. So what's funny is, when you talk about, I don't know how much you guys want. Last thing I want to say about it is you, I don't understand why. Okay, so I went to vote in Hancock County. They scanned my license. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm who I am. I scanned my license. They verified and all that. They checked my signature. They did all that. I mean, I felt confident, that my vote. But what Americans need to have is a scanner on your phone that can track your vote, right? So then you track it all, like it shows that it's there, they got it, they delivered it, it got scanned, it was counted, and your vote was for this person. And like you could verify it. Because what's weird to me is the security around that doesn't seem to be as intense as it is if I want to go buy a bottle of liquor.
Mhm.
So if I'm
Oh,
gonna buy a
yeah.
bottle of liquor, they're really looking at my ID, right? And I always got to show it. Always have to show it. Some states you don't have to. You can just
Well, and
walk
that's
in
one of the
and
things kind of
you
crazy
know,
is that each state kind of sets up their own rules on how to vote,
there
which
needs
it seems, whether it's, how many days,
But
how I know what time hours were
yeah,
open,
yeah,
and then you've got it is criminal that Arizona and Nevada.
it is absolutely
I don't know how you don't have enough people at your site that are working it as these votes are coming in, or that we open today. There should be people already behind the scenes at that place that any mail in, we're counting them right now. And as soon as we get caught
uh-huh.
up on the mail in, we are starting to count. We're not waiting until the poll closes to start counting. We're counting as the day goes on, and hopefully you're to a point where people are turning in their ballot, however that is, that you are counting it right there, right at that second. It's counted. And by the time that poll closes and the last person votes, we all be able to have final tally right there. And if
Absolutely.
there's no excuse within 3 hours of that poll being closed that you're not 100% counted for. And if for some reason there needs to be a recount, that's however that rule is put in place, it should be no later than the next day it's done.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think the model is Florida. You used to have Broward County. Used to always be the straggling county, and then boats would show up and all this type of stuff. I noticed that on this go around, Broward County was one of the first ones to have their votes in. So what DeSantis has done in Florida to curtail that has stopped I think the cheating as well too, because there's no hanging chads, right? There's no Broward County's not saying they haven't been represented because they were counting them as they were coming in, right? Sometimes I think this is just me. Sometimes I think they do it. They hold like this Arizona thing. They're waiting for somebody to just go, you won. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, it looks like you're going to get it. Because I think there's been elections probably in the past where they've ran up the numbers for somebody so big, right? Then you think, oh shit, I'm not going to win, and then you're like, yeah, and it doesn't look good, and then the person don't really know, and then they're like, yeah, well, I'm just going to go ahead and concede.
who the hell wants to work one of those things?
What do you
I
mean,
don't
like a
know.
poll?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Because if
It's
you're going to
you don't
get
get paid.
followed, or not only
Yeah,
fucking that, but if you're going to have people scrutinize how you're counting, that's just
I know.
there's no. I mean, we can find out who won Powerball in like an
I
hour,
know. I
but we can't
Yeah.
fucking. I mean, make it simpler? Voting shouldn't be this big of a deal. It should be
know.
simple
They
to
should
vote.
turn it over to Vegas, right? Vegas always seems to always get it right when it comes to gambling and you know what I mean? They s
American
I mean, if
Idol
we
can
want,
can have millions of people vote and get it figured out
yeah.
right
yeah,
then.
if we want to know who's going to win or whatever, those people have to be secure in where they're counting and want to do it and not have to be
Yeah,
hassled after the fact and tell that they got, they didn't count right or
right.
something. There's no win. There's a no win situation with those.
Yeah.
Just,
It's a thankless job.
mhm.
And,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
I mean, it's just man, I don't know what the answer is because it looked like the Republicans got 6 million more votes in the system than the Democrats had.
Hmm. Well,
So, but here's what I'll say too,
But then, go ahead.
is I don't think it was the best year for either one to take
Well,
because of the way the states and where those elections were. In 2024, you can have a huge shift because
why is there gerrymandering? Someone explain that
it's always
in
been
a intelligible way. Why?
it's always been that way, David, since the
I'll
beginning.
tell you what they do is that the politicians, and they think it's trying to help. Well, it's helping them individually, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. They're basically saying, like, if I had an area that, say, I had a bigger area that had almost a 50-50 split, or maybe it was 60-40, and they did this with Andre Carson's area. They shrunk that area down to where it'd be impossible for a Republican to win it.
Right.
And he's fine with that
Mhm.
because he's guaranteed a position. Now you say, "Hey, you gave up some of your territory." Well, I also have guaranteed myself to win. I don't care.
Yeah.
So because no matter how much bigger that Republican piece becomes, it's still one person.
Mhm.
But it guarantees that Republican person too that he wins.
Yeah.
So they're both like, "Hey, should we do this?" Well, I'll sign off on it. You sign off on it because now we're guaranteeing ourselves we're both going to win. And so they work together to make it to where
It's
these
redistricting.
these these districts are only going to go one way.
Mhm.
And they're fine with that
Yeah.
because they're guaranteed to get reelected.
I always say Indiana doesn't, there's not a big Democratic um, showing, right? And as far as the state's concerned as a whole, but there really doesn't need to be because I think the Republicans do a good enough job for the Democrats because they did that for Carson.
Yeah.
And then they did
And
it.
did it up in Lake County too.
Yeah. They did it to like,
Like they said that candidate up
yeah,
there, they were really had high hopes. And I can't remember her name. She was an ex-military
right.
lady.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
a Latin lady.
Yeah.
And they said that that was like their best shot in a long time, and she still was like 8 points off.
Mhm.
And it just goes to show that you the way they've set these districts up, and I think some states were ahead of the curve, but now they're all on it.
Yeah.
And then now it's just got to the point where it's gonna be really hard to start seeing swings in these
Yeah.
districts.
We just did it. We just did it here. That's what for Carson and then Greg Pence. They expanded his. Yeah, they redistrict it, and because they try to sometimes I thought before Carmel was in kind of the cities, and I thought that they did that to wipe out
The
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 Democratic
only the
vote.
only time where you start to get
Yeah,
the pushback in the fight is if they're thinking about taking a adding a head count or losing a head
right.
count because of your population.
How about let's just go clean out everything in the system and start over,
Yeah.
and then everybody re-registers, right?
Yeah.
That's what they should do. Because I couldn't believe the Michigan Attorney General was suing to have 40,000 voters that shouldn't be on the roll to still be on the roll. I mean, there's a guy been voting in Michigan since like the 1860s. I'm not kidding you. They actually sued to keep these people on the roll. They moved, they're dead. It's like, wow, there's could be only one reason you would want them on. Let me think what that reason could be. Because they're voting?
Mhm.
I mean, we're never going to get this thing published on YouTube. It's
No,
going to have a claim underneath.
there's bigger.
Oh, I
I mean,
know. I know.
there's
Man, this good stuff.
Oh,
Delphi,
I know. Like down in Georgia, you looked at the how close that was between Walker and what's his name, but
Warnock.
yeah, Warnock. And if you looked at the third party, which is a libertarian, which is what I say I'm a libertarian, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to vote libertarian. It's how I describe
May it
myself.
cost
It's how I
Herschel.
describe myself.
Yeah.
But
You think it cost him?
well, it cost him this time.
Yeah.
But now because really, I think for the most part, probably not every libertarian is a disenfranchised Republican, but most of them are.
Hmm.
And I think that now, but when you have to go back for this runoff in December 6th, those libertarians, if they show up, they can't vote libertarian. You only
Right.
can vote for one or the other.
Right.
So if those 80,000 and 90,000 votes that went that direction all go to Walker, then he would win. But number one, do they show up?
I think they less show up when they do these runoff things. It's so
Right. But
stupid
then
that they do.
Democrats have always been synonymous with not showing up.
Right.
But there's going to be if Nevada does go to the Republican, it's all falling on Georgia. So I can't even imagine how much crap we're going to see about Georgia over the next month.
Boy,
That's all you're going to hear.
there's some interesting things going on there. You got Lindsey Graham's got to testify on the Georgia investigation into the 2020 Trump tampering with it. Then you got I think the Department of Justice is going to come try to arrest Trump on national TV. It'll be interesting. It'll be
Oh, they're going to have a full.
yeah.
Is he going to actually? They're speculating on the 15th. He's going to announce his
Yeah,
nomination.
I think he's delayed it, and then that he probably will on the 15th. But yeah,
I think he just needs to. If he's going to do it, I think he needs a whole. No, what's a hurry? Because the longer you're out there, that's why I always think some of these politicians, you're out there so long, you get beat up so much.
hmm
I think somebody should just come in last second on
hmm
if your primary is going to be voting in February, come out in December because there's always all sorts of lot of excitement behind the candidate. But you sit out there a year, man, people pick you apart.
Yeah.
Now for him, I guess he's
He's
already
already
been
been
out there.
picked.
So, but if you're DeSantis,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if I'm him, I wait to the last
Well,
second.
he's going to have to, because I don't think you can turn around to the Florida voters who just put you in as governor
Right.
and 2 weeks later say, "Hey, man, I'm running for president." You're going to lose. You probably might lose your state.
But there's not did you hear like a lot of people now this is just the group that was around him they were saying 2 more years because
Yeah.
they know
Yeah.
everybody down there knows.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, because my thing though is, I guess as a whole, I don't think it mattered who the president was going to be. They're going to treat that person like that.
Oh yeah.
And if it would have been Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush, or I'm so tired of the Bushes and Clintons. I mean, we just need those people out of our politics. And um,
Well, let me ask you this:
mhm.
do you think when it gets to 24, do you think Biden will be the Democratic nominee, or
I
do you
think
think they will have pushed him out?
I think I think if the House goes Republican and the Senate goes, because my whole theory was they knew they were going to lose the House, because
Yeah.
there's Biden never filled his ambassador to Italy
Hmm.
slot, and I think he personally left that open for Nancy Pelosi, because they know they're going to lose the House. Historically, the sitting president, the House and or Senate, usually typically turns against their political affiliation year 2 into their administration. So it's played out right. But the next 2024 is when those purple states of where you might, like you were talking about earlier, overturn a Republican or Democrat. That year it will happen. So that's the year to do it, because there's you're talking about going into the deep blue and trying to overturn that, or deep red and overturn. It's going to be difficult to do in this cycle. 2024, there's a lot more seats open in those areas. So I think whoever the Republican or Democrat is has a chance to come in with the House and Senate, which would be huge. But I think that if Biden didn't have a split Senate or a heavily Republican Senate, I don't think he'd run, because I think he's afraid of being impeached with the Hunter Biden stuff. So, and then the Republican that would control the House, yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think we're still going to wait here, but it looks like he's indicating that he's going to run,
Yeah, he's saying he is, but
and you got Gavin Newsom saying he might.
that's who I think's gonna.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
think I think they're gonna push Biden out unless he
Yeah.
just hell he's he. I mean,
Well, one thing we know.
you can't have him come out and actively say the Democratic Party's trying to push me out. He's not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess depending on how big a hard ass he wants to be. I mean, I guess if he wants to, if he's hard headed enough, I mean, there's nothing that's going to keep him. But I mean, he still has to run, right? So I mean, Newsom could be. Um,
I
there's going to be a.
I don't think. Well, typically they don't challenge the president.
I could see it happening though.
I do too. But man, I think what in my mind, if it depends on who the Speaker of the House is, and then because they're going to launch investigations. I mean, there's no way around that. You have to. So those investigations will get stopped in the House, just like when they impeached Trump. He didn't get impeached in the Senate because there wasn't enough
Right.
Democratic votes to do it. So it's the same thing. It'll be there won't be, if it turns out in their favor, there won't be enough votes. So then you stay. Then you stay and you run and you fight it out. Well, if it becomes the opposite of where the House could impeach you and then the Senate can nail it into the coffin, yeah, I think you run the hell out of there. But because those investigations are definitely coming and probably should. So we need to know. We need to know. You know, we need to know where COVID came from. We need to know who was involved in COVID and why we had so much misleading information. We need to know all this stuff, and we don't know that, and they're not wanting to investigate it, right? So we need to know that. We can tell you who the first AIDS patient was,
Mhm.
but we cannot tell you who the first ground zero COVID patient was. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah. And then the whole Hunter deal.
Yeah, Hunter. I mean, yeah. I mean, he is no Ivy League clean cut guy. I mean, you put America through hell with Trump, through hell, and probably 20% of it was brought on by him, and the rest of it was just garbage. So, and then you don't want to do anything with this, which is complete
And
garbage.
this shit was out
So,
before the election.
and hit it.
And yeah.
Yeah, and they hit it. So, which really doesn't say, I mean, I can't look at the media uh, like I once did. Not that I ever had them on a pedestal, but I did at one time um, think there might be truth in it. I don't think there's any in it anymore. I really don't.
Yeah.
It's almost like I was reading a book on programming, and from Weinstein recommended to read a couple books about UFOs, and he recommended. I'll send it to you guys if you want it. But he's like to kind of tell you what's going on in the world if you read these books. I haven't read them all, but anyways, one of the first ones I read was programming and misinformation. I mean, this stuff's been going on since the 20s and 30s, right? So, but if you sit back and then you read that and then you go look at the news, you'll be like, whoa, oh my god. It's kinda like you can just see how it is. It's just spun in a way that keeps you thinking that they're the experts, right? And just kind of the messaging of it, and they're all saying the same thing, really. But why do they all say the same thing, right? They're getting that message from somewhere. So, because if well, I'll just say this real quick. So, if you know anything about the Kennedy assassination, John F. Kennedy, there was like back then some reporters were going to do their own investigation into it, right? So they decide that they're going to look into it. So this one guy starts looking into it, and he knows someone in the intel department. They come to him and they said, "Hey, man, look at this list," and they show him the list, and he looks at the list and he's like, "Yeah, I know some of those people." And he's like, "Yeah, these people are on the CIA's payroll." He goes, "Whoa, wait a minute. I work with, I know, whoa." He goes, "Yeah, you're never going to get what you need." So that's why a lot of people never did their own back then, right?
Mhm.
Because they were smashed. And then what did Lyndon Johnson do? He said all information regarding Kennedy
Buried.
assassination. Yeah. Yep. He said anything
What
else
was
that,
it for till it was supposed to be originally, it was like
yeah,
2012, it was
yeah,
supposed to be
yeah.
released, and
Why,
then I
why?
think a couple of pieces got
Yeah,
released. Well, until the last person's buried,
right.
and even then, maybe
Oh,
not,
I don't think we're.
'cause then somebody else is
Yeah. And when we do know some more, Trump released some stuff and Biden had to release some stuff. I mean, we do know now that it does appear to be that Lee Harvey Oswald was an FBI informant, that they did know him. The CIA did know him and communicated with him and was warned about him and did nothing with it. So um I mean, guy flies to Russia, comes back, heads to Mexico
Yep.
City embassy, Russian embassy in Mexico City. I think it might draw some attention. I mean, they knew about it. They knew it.
Oh, yeah.
So it just the Gulf of Tonkin, right? It's just it weapons of mass destruction. I mean, it English English, our America may not be telling the truth when you hear these words. British officials are reporting, right? That's America's way to go. Oh, and RCA is now working with them.
Mhm.
And then they always say that. And then you're like, oh, God, the British are smart. Right? It's like,
It's
man,
because it got 007,
they
man, yeah.
figured it all out, right?
'Cause
They
they talk different. They
yeah.
sound smarter.
Well, they were the weapons of mass destruction. British intelligence reports weapons of mass destruction. Well, there's weapons of mass destruction. Never found.
But we started a war because of it.
Yeah, sure did. Killed a lot of people died.
Mhm.
A lot of people died because the program said we needed to do
Yep.
it. This is so bad, dude.
Mhm.
It's so bad, man, dude. This has been 2 hours.
It's a long
We
one.
still have a little bit more to
All
go.
right, here we go.
We'll tie
What?
this into random thoughts.
Hey,
I
yeah,
was
tie
going to
in.
keep them separate. So, according to thehill.com and Yelp reviews, our sponsor of the show and my favorite place to go, The Great Divide was named Indiana's best dive bar.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Wow.
I'm not so sure that that's something they were looking
Can you
to
get an
have.
applause
But
there?
there you go. Congratulations to the Great Divide and their recent award. I don't know that. I'm. Have you ever been to the Checkered Flag?
Yeah.
I'm sure the Checkered Flag saying "Hold my beer" because
Yeah.
not that the Great Divide doesn't deserve the added or to be called a great dive bar, but I'm not so sure that's the
Have you
ambiance
and
or
Tim
the
been in the checkered flag?
Tim and I know. I
I
have
thought
been,
you
but
brought me
not
there.
with Tim. Yeah, but not with Tim.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, you and I have been.
yeah, I thought so. It's the only time I've been there.
Or, but congratulations to them. And they
So the
also have
best-
the best dive bar in every state listed on their website, which is, I don't know half of these or any of them, but it was good to see the Great Divide on that list. So, it
Dude,
was
that is
awesome.
huge.
Yeah. But I can think of more divey bars in Indy than the Great Divide.
Yeah.
What did they base it off? Do you know?
That's a good question. They based it off of what I get my glasses on.
Because their food's good there too.
Yeah. So
It's a throwback bar, dude.
completely.
Yeah.
Yelp defines dive bars as well-worn bars that offer an inexpensive, simple selection of drinks. So, and I'm like, I just wonder if that was that Yelp algorithm that just kind of searched for dive bars and just pulled, okay, Great Divide's mentioned 150,000 times, then boom, they win or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it was. What else to say? Yeah, I mean, when you go in there and I talk to them about it. I mean, I think they're like, yeah, that's cool, but that's what they striving to be.
Have you talked to them about it?
Packed yesterday.
Have you had a chance to
Just
tell them?
kind of a little bit, Jen's
Sure they
like,
know about it.
yeah, Jen's like, yeah, James doesn't necessarily want to be known as a dive bar, and you're like, okay, but then yesterday James was like, they used to own the what was that place there on Michigan? They used to own Lockerbie Pub.
Lockerbie, yeah.
And Lockerbie got the same.
Have you ever
award.
been to is it Behringer's Tavern?
Mm-mm.
Behringer's Tavern?
Why does that ring a bell?
It's down off of basically Meridian and where Pleasant Run comes in. Here, what would be the intersection here? It's a really old place. I think maybe what would be if we checked out that place? It's like a picture of it right there.
Look, this looks a little bit like, oh wow, it's like a really good place.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's just a little south of downtown,
So-
off of Meridian.
So David,
Never
B,
heard of,
you got a nose for dive bars.
and I do
'Cause, like,
But I think I read something
That-
on this that was really old, and then it shut down for a while, and then it reopened.
For you to, I've never been to Great Divide, right? Until you,
Well,
you. I mean,
the story on that, I think Big Lefty and I just randomly one day went in there. He goes, I had driven by there X amount of times, and so it was about 8 years ago on a Wednesday at the end of April. Our birthdays are right next to one another, and so we go in there to kind of celebrate. Sit at the middle of the bar, and the owners at the time are, "Who are you guys, and where are you from?"
Yeah.
The only time our names were mentioned, and just hit it off from there. So
it was a good one. You picked the number one.
yeah.
I mean, that's impressive, dude.
Yeah. So now the Fever get to pick number one too. Those of you excited about the WNBA, if any
Yeah.
of you are still listening.
WNBA.
Yeah.
And then so also on December the 16th, the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast is hosting a ugly sweater contest at the Great Divide from 4 to 7. So those of you listening, if you're still listening and want to be involved, it's $5 a person, winner take all. I don't know how we'll vote on who's the ugliest sweater, but we'll figure something out. So
Nice.
this is probably our fourth one. We don't really push this event often, but it's kind of something for everybody to get together right before the holidays. So that's Friday, December the 16th, 4 to 7 at the Great.
Boom. Thank you, David.
This bar is 140 years old.
And I saw They have food or they don't
Yes,
have
they
food?
do
Okay.
have food.
The Behringer?
Yeah.
What are their hours? Like 11A to 3A?
I'm sure I got them. Whatever, we would go down there. Well, they have lunch specials, so they're open early enough that you could day drink for sure. If you were thinking more of the early side as opposed to the late side,
That on the 22nd?
maybe that's what I was kind of thinking. Maybe to check it out. Behringer's Tavern, right on Meridian.
He established it.
Yep.
Well, that can't be the oldest, is it?
No,
What'd you say it was?
It said it was 140 years old, but I think the oldest one, or the one that claims to be the oldest, is a Slippery Noodle.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know how far that goes
Well, I think
back.
I've seen this. Are you sure, David, we haven't been there?
It doesn't even ring a bell. I mean, it looks like a How far south is this?
It's
25, 35.
from right from the circle. It's probably a 10-minute drive south, I would imagine. I don't even know if it's that. I mean, depending on the lights.
Food looks good.
I'm just throwing it out
Is that
there.
Irish?
Just think, because you got me thinking dive places hole in the walls. Maybe that's what we need to do, is just pick out different hole in the wall. Somebody pick out a hole in the wall we go to.
There's the jukebox, the number one thing that's needed. So.
Oh, they got that, huh? Well,
Yeah.
done deal then, isn't
Yep.
it?
Da-da-da.
We're in.
I got to start doing my homework for my Stump Matty Ice song. Whatever.
I've got one song already, which I had forgotten all about.
We were sitting at the Great Divide yesterday, and one of the regulars, Tim, not our Tim, but a different Tim, came in, and he gives me this. Hey, do you know this? You know, he kind of just hums out the lyrics, and now I can't think of the name. What the humming? And I like, it's one of them things where like it's right there. You're like, I know what that song is. It's kind of got a little disco-y sound to it, and not a lot of words, and just kind of.
Was it from this disco era?
I think so. I mean, if he was humming it out, I picked up on it right away, and it almost sounds Barry White-ish, but I'm not sure that it was Barry White. It's just the way
It wasn't. One of my favorite songs from back then from the soul was Show and Tell by Al Wilson.
I don't think so.
You know that song? Great song. You know a song. If you heard it, you would.
You know it?
Yeah, you heard it, you would know it.
Is that a Bridges dropping song?
I think it's a panty dropping song for sure.
Yeah.
Dude, put it in there. I don't know. Whatever ladies are still listening to this podcast, you could let us know.
My wife claims to listen.
Well,
Says she
you
likes
just
it.
say, hey, listen to the last 5 minutes of this and let's see what happens.
Right. Al Wilson.
What's
That's a Al Wilson Show and Tell. You dialing it up?
Looking for the Al Wilson. There we go. Oh no, that's not it.
Oh, I've heard this. This is huge.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Soul Train, baby. Give
Yeah.
it to me.
Wow.
It's a beautiful
I do
song.
like, yeah, I do like this. This is not that song. So, sing it, Matty Ice. So, Tony, talk to me about the fedora. Your fedora. It's a fedora.
Oh yeah.
It probably looks good on you, Tony.
I can. Yeah.
I
Where'd that come from?
had it for years.
Oh.
UPS. I was going to wear it for Halloween and just sat it there. At UPS we had a party, and we were supposed to dress up old fashioned, and so I just did that.
I can see you with an overcoat and a briefcase
I like
with the
it.
fedora.
Yeah, I like it. I like
Sinatra look.
it. Yeah. I
Goes with the radio.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Hmm.
Gotta get you one of those, man.
Oh, I'll get. I really do like that.
I think me and Timmy.
Where
might
did you
split
get it?
for you.
No, you don't need it.
Yeah. Oh, Amazon. Got it on Amazon. A while ago, though.
And who? What kind of radio? What's the name on the radio? The name brand?
It is a Sanjin.
Oh yeah, those.
Yeah. It's I think it's made by the same people that made Bose.
It does have a really good sound. But producer Tony's got an old timey looking radio.
Yeah.
I see that.
In the
Yeah, it's not
It
bad.
does. No, it sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
It does look old timey though.
Radio man whip antenna going up there, right?
So it has 3 antennas, right?
Yeah, I have 3 antennas, 2 AM one's kind of a
Man, I'm an old.
seeker, and one's a you tie it together and it's supposed to
I love AM radio, just AM radio, just like barely turning the dial and picking up like Boston or Atlanta or whatever, different radios.
Yeah,
Chicago, Minnesota, or Minneapolis, excuse me.
Chicago 800, 750.
890, 720, 670.
670 the score, 720 W.
What's
what's
BBM?
BBM is 780.
Yep.
This is WBBM 780.
If you, one of the things that every now and again I'll find myself like on YouTube and listening to old time radio shows, like Larry Lou Jack or Fred Winston or somebody like that.
Larry Lou Jack. Yeah. Hanging out on a Saturday morning.
Yeah,
It looks like maybe the snow was starting.
a little bit.
It's hot and 80 degrees all of a sudden. It's amazing.
So you are listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
David B. Ship's gonna happen. Give us it again, David.
What's that?
David B. You're listening to Ship's gonna happen.
Hey, this is David B, and you're listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
Nice. Hey, man.
Live promos.
The 22nd, Tony, put that on your calendar.
I got it. I think we did
I'd
it.
like to start at that Behringer's
Oh, we're doing it.
start place, or
I think I got it in
Sure.
there already.
It looks like they're be receptive to. Yeah. Wonder how come I've never heard of that. How did you find out about it?
And what was it? I think I saw an article on it not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure there's got to be, a shit ton of bars we have not been into.
Oh yeah.
All over the place. But you probably go down like Washington or 10th Street,
Well,
Troy, all these that were in old neighborhoods once upon a time.
Oh,
Or,
right.
I'm sure there's got to be a ton
Have you
of
ever
them.
been into get the name, the record store in Fountain Square? Have you done that yet?
I haven't.
That's pretty cool.
What is the name of that place, Tony?
The vinyl.
The Square Cap Vinyl.
Square Cap
yeah.
Vinyl.
So they have a bar in the back.
It's nice.
Beers
You ever
and
been there?
wine.
I haven't.
It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, they sell used records and new records.
New and
probably.
used, yeah. And they'll play them for you.
Yeah.
What if you buy them right
Yep.
there?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kinda cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like it. It's pretty cool.
And they also have a little stage, and so Tony
Yeah.
and I were in there once, and I asked them if they'd be willing to host us as a podcast, and the dude's like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Well, I was. I'm not now. Clearly. Just say no." He's like, "No, I don't consider it." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." But it was a perfect setting for it.
Yeah.
For us to, like, if we were a host of like a 100th show party or whatever, for people to come in and
Right.
it would have been the ideal spot. That dude wouldn't nothing to do
Yeah.
with us. Oh,
It's a pretty unique place, though.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you could spend out if you're a big music person. You could spend.
Oh,
hours
yeah.
in there. And you have a vinyl if you're wanting to expand your vinyl.
I think they let the bartender pick some albums out to play, right?
Mhm.
That are,
Yeah.
and then you.
I don't know if it was Tony that I was in there with one time, but it was we had a substitute teacher as our bartender.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Lady?
it was
Yeah.
and it was how do I want to say this the right way? All of Fountain Square, it must have been Brawless Day or something. Everywhere we looked.
God bless him.
Yeah.
God bless him.
Like, holy cow, what is going on around here? But That's a good play.
Playing a little-
Greg Cat Vinyl.
Playing a little Freedom by George Michael today.
Yes.
Freedom.
Yes.
In celebration of Brawless Day. Freedom by George Michael.
Yes.
Yeah.
Set them free.
Free, free, set them free.
All right. Well, listen. I do like that. It is well done.
All right. So we got anything else, David? You
I got
anything?
nothing. That was it.
Let me play the outro for it. Give our buddy
Rich Warren.
Rich Warren. I played the wrong one.
Jeez. Pete.
You can't go another 2 hours.
No, no. Actually, I think I had to delete it.
I don't think I ever had the stamina to ever go.
That's what she's.
Oh,
hey,
you deleted the outro?
yeah, I had to.
All right.
There was a button sticking
Do you
earlier.
still have it, or do you?
Oh, I
delete
got it. Yeah,
Okay.
I just got to put it back in the
That's
board.
Or if you just have the song, you can just fade with it.
I did. I had to take 2 buttons off because they were. I don't know. I got to see what's going on. They were sticking and automatically playing, and I kept like pushing them and trying to get it to stop.
So subscribe to our podcast, smash that like button, click subscribe, and thank you for listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.